All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Saturday Standouts. With me, as always, is my co-host on Saturday Standout, Sam Daring. Sam, go ahead and say hey, and then we'll jump into a little bit of introduction before we get into our actual show and our defensive end prospects tonight in the 2021 NFL Draft.
I'm doing well, man. Just midterm week, getting closer to graduation. But yeah, I'm doing well. Excited to tackle the edge rushers.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. A lot of big names on this list that a lot of people should know. So it's gonna be exciting. But before you get going, obviously I'm wearing green. I can't tell what color Sam's wearing right now. But navy blue on. But he's got a green wristband, so we'll count it. So nobody go and punch Sam while we're live on show. That'd be awful. But happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you Irish people out there. I have Irish heritage myself, so I do celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But I was at work all day, so that was fun. But we'll jump into a couple of our sponsors. Yes, sir. The Jordy Nelson jersey making an appearance. It's one of the only two green things that I do own. And I kind of had to give an ode to my co-host here as well, who is a huge Green Bay Packer fan. So, something nice to throw on for today. Man, Washington football team hit Samuel, hit him for cheap. Very happy. Yep. I bet there's a lot of Washington fans out there that are happy that they got Samuel for as cheap as they did. Wide receiver market's a little bit different this year with another deep draft and teams thinking they can get wide receivers for cheaper elsewhere. Samuel coming off right there at a pretty cheap price. That's good for them. But without further ado, if you're a gambling person like myself, March Madness is coming up. That's an exciting time to bet if you even don't bet, on a regular basis. Head over to mybookie.ag and use code USN100 for double your first deposit. If you screenshot that and send it to us at Unwrap Sports, you will also be entered into our giveaway for David Montgomery jersey, right?
Yep, David Montgomery.
The David Montgomery jersey, running back for the Bears. It's signed as well, and you'll be entered into that. Just screenshot that if you go ahead and use that code on MyBookie. Send it to us, and you'll be entered in that drawing for that. Meanwhile, while I'm talking about that, our Patreon, it's awesome, guys. That $10 level tier is where you can also get entered into that jersey giveaway. $10 a month. It's awesome. You also get benefits such as being in the Discord with a bunch of contributors and directors of the network, which is awesome. It goes 24/7 all day, every day. You also get entered into a $10 Amazon gift card as well on that level, which you also get at the $5 level. You also get entered into Discord at the $5 level. And then on both levels, you get a discount off of our Teespring store. So if you head over to teespring.com, you will find all of the Unwrapped merchandise and gear there, and you get 20% off on that $10 level and 10% off on that $5 level. If not, support us. You just enjoy our shows. You just want to be there for us, your family or whatnot that's watching this, your friends. Just $1 a month. It helps us, helps our network grow, be able to use a couple more resources like StreamYard here. Those things cost money to be able to do the technology that we use. So we thank you for no matter what you're able to contribute. But that David Montgomery signed jersey, and we do a monthly signed memorabilia giveaway at that $10 level too, guys. So it makes it worth it. $10 a month, you're entered into a raffle to be able to get these signed memorabilia. Last month we had a Keenan Allen signed powder blue jersey, and that was awesome. This month, again, the David Montgomery jersey. So it's great stuff we have going on over there. Also, rxhemp.com, great stuff. It's all natural CBD. Pain relief cream. It's a hot and cold mechanism like a lot of your other things, but it's all natural CBD stuff. So it's very soothing on the joints and the sore muscles and the pain. Head over there to rxhemp.com and use code RXHemp-USN for 10% off every single one of your purchases, guys. It's amazing stuff. I like to use it, when my back after I've been standing all day at work and things of that nature. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our 2021 NFL Draft edge prospects, guys, and I'm going to let Sam take it away with the first one.
Sure. Let's start with the one that we've always been big on him. I've always been big on him from the start as well, and that's Kwity Paye over from Michigan. I remember writing a draft profile on him for the Cards Wire, back in September, and he blew up. I mean, and we've seen a lot of Michigan defensive talent come out. And Aiden Hutchinson was the other guy. And now Aiden Hutchinson was out indefinitely with a leg injury, and he's returning to Michigan. But Kwity Paye, I think he is a top 10 prospect in this draft. I think he's arguably top 10, maybe top 15, but I would argue he is top 10. There was a reason throughout the college football season you were seeing him in so many first round mocks. This dude is an athletic freak, as an athletic guy from the Athletic college football writer called him. He's extremely powerful. He's active with his hands. I'm going to keep bringing this up. His matchup with Tristan Wirfs, where he was beating him with his cuts and his technique and his speed on the inside. Connie, how's it going, man? But yeah, I mean, pretty good future. But yeah, I love Kwity Paye, and I'm going to continue to be high on him.
Yeah, I like him too. Both were high on him throughout our shows that we've had on here. It's been amazing to watch him grow from the previous season leading up till this season, and what he's been able to add to his repertoire at the defensive end position. Not only that, I think one of his biggest growth areas this season has been he's been moved inside a little bit more, and been able to learn those moves and how to get around the guys in the middle, and that is going to go a long way in terms of his NFL career. Like yourself, Sam, I really like Kwity Paye. Probably, those first 15 picks, he's worthy of that draft grade. It's a matter on if how much teams want defensive ends, especially after the free agents frenzy that we're seeing going on right now. I mean, there's not a lot of defensive ends changing teams or anything compared to other positions there in the NFL. But Kwity Paye, I think he has all the tools, and he's not necessarily going to come in and be the most productive guy right off the bat. He'll be productive for you. I mean, he could shock me as long as you match him up with somebody on the other side as well that could be productive, or like able to draw the attention away from him. Then you could see him kind of flourish a little bit more. But if you give him a couple years and you give him time to round into his NFL style and grow on the things that he's already learned this past year at Michigan, as well as what he's going to be learning in his first year in the NFL and maybe another year after that, then you can really start to see Kwity Paye, take off. The guy's a big man. I think he's 6'7" or 6'4", 277. He's just going to do great. He's got great size, speed, athleticism. His technique, like I said before, is improving, and he's got great upside, and that's a huge thing when you're looking at edge rushers here in the draft.
Yeah, and I mean, this is another position too that we don't know how many numbers. Like, we don't know the amount of edge rushers we could see go in the first round. We've seen an ample amount, right? We've seen Patrick Jones, Joseph Osai, both guys of which we'll get to, even Jason Owe. Kwity Paye, I think, arguably is going to go in the top half of the first round. And if there is one knock I would have to give him, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a red flag, but you do see him play a little high with his initial step off the ball. And with that, he'll tend to play high at times. But I mean, that to me, that's an easy fix. And there's a reason I wrote it for the Cardinals, because they needed big edge rush help. But now, after the J.J. Watt signing and, trading for Rodney Hudson, keeping Marcus Golden, even signing A.J. Green today, they might look later for an edge rusher and look for a guy like J.C. Horn in the corners, which we'll get to in later episodes. But if I'm looking at a team that needs Kwity Paye, that would benefit very much from Kwity Paye, I am looking at the Minnesota Vikings. And you look at Danielle Hunter the other day, Danielle Hunter might hold out. And they need another star, and they restructured Anthony Barr's contract, so he very well could be on his way out. He basically took a pay cut to stay in Minnesota when he initially had signed with the New York Jets. So they bring in Kwity Paye. He is their defensive player of the future. I love it. Not necessarily as a Packer fan, but I love it.
Yeah, it's a good move for them. I agree with you. Anthony Connie coming in here saying collab's going to go crazy. It absolutely is, guys. Forgot to mention that to start the show, but if you guys pay attention to Unwrapped Sports and the Unwrapped Sports shows, we have Saturday Standouts here, which is more of a college-based leading into the NFL type of show. And then we've got the Hard Count, which is like the NFL show, which they do late at nights. I think is it Friday nights. They usually go live. I'm not 100% sure.
The Hard Count, I want to say it's Tuesday nights.
Tuesday nights, late at night. It's something like that, because it's usually when I have another show and I try and get over there immediately after and watch it. And that makes sense because I do have Tribaholics on Tuesdays. So yeah, Tuesday nights they go live. Hard Count, they got great stuff. It's him and our guy CJ over at it's Connie and our boy CJ here at the Unwrapped Sports Network. They're great guys. We can't wait to collab with them. We're going to slide over to their show one night, and then another night they're going to slide over to ours, and we're super excited because it'll be two different mock drafts, and things are going to be constantly changing leading up to the draft as well. You start looking for trades at that point of the season, and we're both excited Both of our shows are excited to be able to join each other and can't wait for that. But yeah, Kwity Paye, he's a boss. I like him a lot. It's all about improving for him when it comes to the next level. Vikings are a good fit because they obviously need help on the edges, and they're sitting right there in the middle of that first round. So that's a good spot for Kwity Paye to go. And, we'll move on here to our next guy, Sam, and we'll just go. We're not going in any specific orders. So if you guys want to judge us for not putting these guys in an order, go ahead. Let us know in the comments, whatever. But our next guy on the list is going to be Azeez Ojulari, who is a edge rusher out of Georgia.
Yeah, in 6'3", 240. This is a guy that you had a lot of high praise on, Caleb, during the season, previewing these eligible draft prospects. And this is another edge rusher with the opt-outs of guys like Gregory Rousseau, that did come out of nowhere. And that did come out of nowhere and just blow up college football. I know some people I was looking at the Draft Network. I want to say it was Jordan Reed. He's got Azeez Ojulari as his edge rusher 1. I personally still have Kwity Paye, but he's got Azeez Ojulari. Georgia had their pro day today. I want to say his 40 was around 4.83, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got an ample amount of speed. Love his footwork, and he's, as Pro Football Network likes to say, he's a gifted pass rusher and I think he definitely has elite vision. I think he's got a very successful career. And if there's one team that I think should be just looking at edge rushers anyway in this draft, even arguably maybe even drafting more than one, that's definitely the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, Tennessee needs help on the defensive line as well, whether that be in the middle or on the outside. They could definitely go for both. Maybe go 2 defensive ends. The Jadeveon Clowney experiment didn't work out for them, and they got ran on. They got passed on a lot last year. Their defense was any close to a resemblance as it was the year before, and they need some serious help. So that would be a good pickup for them. Azeez Ojulari is probably the most polished pass rusher in this draft. So I don't understand. I understand why people have him as the number 1 overall pass rusher. I think he posted a 91.7 pass rushing grade this past season at Georgia, which is astonishing for a kid still in college. So I think the only problem that comes to mind when you think of Azeez Ojulari is that he's small. He is very small for an edge rusher in the NFL. You're going to need to beef up a little bit. You're going to need to get stronger. I think he only weighs about 240 pounds, which is not what you need going into the NFL. You need to add a little bit of weight, which I'm sure he will once you get into that regimen. But you expect a guy who is at an SEC program like Georgia to already have those types of things figured out. Not the case here for Ojulari. So I guess that's the biggest question mark. But man, is he effective when he comes up. I think one of his mantras, or a quote that he likes to live by, is if you beat him with your hands, you beat the man. So he uses his hands a lot. He knows how to maneuver the offensive lineman to better put himself in a position to get in the backfield, and that's what I really like about him. He's very versatile, knows what he's doing well. And the only question mark again is his size. What are we going to see him do leading up into the draft? Because you can get bigger in plenty of time from here to now. Not monster gains or anything like that, but big enough to where you can make it look a little better, and hopefully you retain the same speed, athleticism you have heading into the NFL season. Obviously, there's an off season too, so you'll have time to get into shape there. But yeah, I really like Azeez Ojulari, and like you said, I was high on him. When we were talking about were we doing an SEC at the beginning of the year or something like that, or maybe defensive?
Yeah, I think you were covering guy to watch, something like that. It had something to do with previewing the week.
Mm-hmm. Christian hopping in and saying he's a baller. So
yeah. I mean, he's athletic, and he's got a lot of I don't want to repeat what you just said, but he is athletic, and you see a lot of fire and explosion off the ball from him. But he's not the only edge rusher. There's a few more that we'll get to here, but he's not the only edge rusher that does lack size.
Yeah, he's not. It's plentiful, and especially at the college level. So you see that transfer over to the NFL, and it usually pans out in the right direction there. But we'll hop off of Azeez Ojulari here, and let's just get into a couple of the teammates that we have on this list, and that's going to be Gregory Rousseau, Jaelan Phillips, who Christian is coming in here and asking about right now, and that was a perfect transition because let's attack them. They're next on our list, and I'll let you start with whoever you would prefer.
Yeah, and I think the edge rusher that everyone's going to be anxious to see where he falls is Gregory Rousseau. And Jalen Phillips was a guy that, the opt out of Gregory Rousseau helped him, right? Because he wasn't the one, probably the only edge rusher. Because Quincy Roche, we had a lot of high praise on. He had an up and down season. He affected his draft stock pretty decent in a pretty decent amount. But Gregory Rousseau is 6'6", 260 pounds. He's massive. And, if you're looking at a guy like, I would have loved him on the Cardinals if they wouldn't have snagged J.J. Watt on that. It was a 2-year, $31 million deal. But, I think J.J. Watt, or not J.J. Watt, I think Gregory Rousseau has the talent, to come in and be that day one starter. I think for a team that desperately needs an edge rusher, I think Gregory Rousseau, has the talent to be that edge rusher of the future and be that lead number one guy in that edge rusher room on an NFL team.
He's been the consensus number one overall pass rusher since the get-go when we started talking about this class. Well, not before, because obviously people talk about it like Jalen Phillips was the 5-star number one overall recruit coming out of high school, and you're trying to, pan them out 3-4 years after that. But when it kind of came down to it in the past 2 seasons or so, Gregory Rousseau was that guy. That was on everybody's radar. And him, opting out obviously didn't help this past season. But you just look at the numbers that he was able to put up in the season before this in 2019, 15 and a half sacks total, 14 of those unassisted in 13 games, 22 tackles for loss and 54 tackles, 2 forced fumbles. Just a hell of an athlete, a motor, it seems like. But there's a lot of people out there that think he's overrated. I'm not sure what the case and everything is behind that. I guess it's just because people don't view him as a true edge rusher. So like most of his production came inside when he was going inside against guards and centers and being able to blitz up the middle that way instead of going on the outside. So I guess that's really where the question mark comes into play for him. And that's why people don't really see him as an edge, but more of a guy who can, flip right and back and forth. And at that point, do you ask him to move to an outside linebacker position? Is he fast enough to be able to play that position if he does lose weight? I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll be fine as an edge rusher. But I guess that's the only knock that a lot of people are having on him now. That and the opt out of the season, kind of hurt his draft stock here. But like you said, Sam, you think he's the best, edge guy in this draft. And, it's highly possible that he could be just because he's a absolute freak of nature. He's super tall, 6'6", 260, just massive frame of a man. And, speaking on Jalen Phillips is the that actually played this past season, the transfer from UCLA, I believe. So that's the guy they got out from Cali down to Miami. And obviously Quincy Roche, the transfer from Temple. And so you were expecting big things from maybe both of them, or at least have Quincy Roche be the number one guy. And it turned out to be the opposite. Jalen Phillips ended up being that guy, and he really showed off what he was able to do this past season. He didn't have very much production leading up into this past season. So I guess that's another question mark with him is this just a one-hit wonder type deal? He was all constantly in the backfield, whether he got the sack or not. Another big guy, 6'5", 266, very good size, speed, athleticism, and strength. He had 45 total tackles last year, 8 sacks, a pick, and 3 passes knocked down. So he does a little bit of everything. He's more of that balanced type of defensive end instead of just trying to bull rush and get to the backfield. He is actually watching the quarterback, what they're doing, and that it fits the NFL mold a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think another thing before we go into Jalen Phillips here, to point out about Gregory Rousseau, I definitely feel like one of the reasons people do think he's overrated is because he does have a lot of limited elite tape. He came out with 54 total tackles and 15 and a half sacks in 2019, was sidelined with an ankle injury in 2018, then opted out. So, I mean, he does yes, he does have limited amount of tape to look at, but that limited amount of tape shows you that he is capable of being an NFL, franchise cornerstone of a defense. I don't necessarily think he is the top edge rusher. I think a lot of us went into the season, thinking it was Gregory Rousseau, but Kwity Paye to me came out on top. Azeez Ojulari is passing people up. I would probably put Rousseau right behind Kwity Paye and Azeez at 3. But I mean, I'm glad you brought up the idea, of him moving on the inside, is we're potentially going to be seeing that out of Las Vegas with the Raiders, right? And they went out and signed Yannick Ngakoue. Cleveland Farrell was an edge rusher out of Clemson who, total Mike Mayock pick, reaches for a guy like him at what, I think it was 4 or 5, I think it was 4. And we're probably going to be seeing him playing a good amount on the inside. So, and that Cleveland Farrell's 6'4", 265 pounds. So, but yeah, I mean, back to your point on Jaelan Phillips here, and you're right. Quincy Roche was a guy that, I was pretty high on coming into the season. And, we might not see him till maybe even a very early day 3 pick, a 3rd round at the very earliest, because I don't think he's going in the first 2 rounds. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think Miami had their pro day yet. And as I mentioned, Georgia had theirs today. But and you're right, like Jaelan Phillips, like with the opt-outs of Gregory Rousseau, and Jaelan Phillips was a guy that certainly came on top.
Yeah, he did. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about the Raiders and what they're doing. I just choose not to pay attention to them because I just don't understand what Gruden ever does. Like what kind of decisions he makes sometimes is whatever. But apparently there's more going on there that we don't know about. Apparently Derek Carr is a dick and not a lot of people like him. So that is what that is. We're not going to turn this into a Raiders show. But yeah, Quincy Roche kind of fell off the map there. He's dropping. I see him, being right around that 3rd round too, maybe even later, just because he didn't have a whole lot of production. But Jaelan Phillips is coming out game against my Noles. He just made our offensive line look silly. Obviously, Florida State's offensive line isn't anything to, scare people in the first place. So, Jaelan Phillips just had a day, and everybody was like, "Ooh, like this is gonna be like this guy is, somebody to keep an eye on." Came in, highly touted out of high school, number 1 overall recruit, went to UCLA, had some injury concerns there, ended up transferring to Miami and being a very productive player this past season. Do you, as an NFL GM and NFL coach, do those injury concerns, sway you off of him at all?
To me, if I'm an NFL GM and I see a guy that has, already red flags of an injury, to me, that is a major red flag. But I think Jaelan Phillips certainly does have the talent to go in the 1st round. This is, outside of the edge rusher. Actually, you know what? No, actually, I'll say with the edge rusher. Rashawn Gary played with a torn labrum, and he refused to have surgery and played through his rookie season. And I understand a torn labrum does affect certain positions more than others. Like you saw Jonah Williams out of Bama. He had a torn labrum, offensive tackle for the Bengals, going into, I believe it's his 3rd season now. He was sidelined his rookie season, and Rashawn Gary had the choice to take surgery, but he refused to have surgery. And he might not have. That's another guy, and I don't need to go too in depth with this, but I mean that's another guy that might not might have a limited amount of elite tape, because if you look at his college tape, he's getting double teamed a lot. But yeah, I mean, if I'm seeing someone like that has red flags like that, or injuries, major injuries, I should say, that to me is a red flag. But I mean, Gregory Rousseau had one injury, and even Jalen Waddle. Like I've heard someone say durability, and it's one injury. Like if it's one injury, that's one thing. But like if it's something else, if it's multiple, then yeah, I would definitely say that's a red flag. But Jaelan Phillips has certainly made a case for himself to be in the 1st round. Is he solidified? I don't think so, but he certainly has made a case for himself to be selected in the 1st round.
Yeah, I think so. Gregory Rousseau easily. I think Jaelan Phillips is right there. We'll see. He'll most likely go in the 1st round. I would believe it as well. I just see them as being 2 lethal threats that a lot of people like to see. And, Jaelan Phillips with that complete tool set I was talking about earlier that a lot of NFL teams covet now in a defensive end. He fits that mold very well. And then on the other side, Gregory Rousseau can do a whole lot of different things and is just a, unique specimen when it comes to the defensive end position that you can move inside, outside as well. So both 2 good guys. They'll probably go the 1st round. A guy that not necessarily will go in the 1st round, but let's cover him because it's a name that a lot of people know, and that's Joseph Ossai out of Texas.
Yeah, I don't remember what the game was. I think it was this year. But this is a guy that, has made plays from all over the field. I'm trying to remember what game it was.
Where he sacked the for the win.
I think it might have been Oklahoma or something like that.
Oklahoma State, I think he sacked
Yep.
their quarterback to win the game in overtime.
Sanders, yeah, Spencer Sanders.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was the one. I think that's the game I'm thinking of. But yeah, I mean, this guy, I think he does a really nice job against the run. We'll get to linebackers next week, I'm assuming, because that's another guy I like against the run as well as Nick Bolton. But we'll get more in depth with him probably next week, I'm assuming. But Joseph Ossai is a guy that can make plays from all over the field. If I remember correctly, I feel like I've seen him. I feel like I've seen people mark him down as a linebacker, but more so as an edge rusher because of his elite speed off the ball. And I think that's one thing that definitely stands out for him is his speed and his vision.
Yeah, I think he played off the ball prior to last season, pretty much the whole time while he was on the field. This past season, he was kind of mixed between the two, depending on what formation and blitz packages that, Texas wanted to run. He had very overall average grades, sitting around 81, I think, on both pass and rushing, which is pretty solid for an edge guy. And he gives you that versatility, knowing how to, come off the edge as well as just working in at the defensive end on the line of scrimmage. And he was on the field a lot last year. He was on the field for an average of, let's see here, 65.3 snaps per game, which is pretty much a whole game if you think about on the offensive side of the ball. That's a lot, or on the defensive side of the ball, excuse me. And especially there in the Big 12 where it's a lot of plays being snapped. So, he was on the field a lot. I don't know if that has anything to do with his durability heading into the NFL. If anything, I think it makes it better for him to be able to withstand the long season that is required in the NFL. Other than that, he's just overall, a limber guy, nice flexibility and coordination, good with his eyes when it comes to being able to spot the ball in the backfield. So overall, a pretty solid guy. I don't know how high he'll go, but, he'll be a serviceable defensive end, whoever gets to pick him up.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is I think he does show a lot of versatility and reliability. What did you say, 63% of what the snaps played?
Yeah.
There's one knock I've seen people give him is his ability to take those hits, to take some of those hits that he's taken. I know Pro Football Network or someone, it was Troy Pauling, said that, he's after he takes his hit, it's tough for him to get back into his actual playing form. So I think that's one area that he'll need to work on. He certainly has the size to make a case and prove people wrong with the right coaching. But I don't think he's going in the first round. I think he's one of those edge rushers that, we'll see very early in the second round. But yeah.
Yeah, he'll be good. Like I said, serviceable to whatever team he gets picked out by. But let's keep it moving here, and we'll go to a guy whose name might not be as widely known as a side, who's kind of in a similar role that Ossai has. Whether that's off the line of scrimmage, coming off as an outside linebacker, or on the line of scrimmage as a defensive end. And he's out of Washington, 6'5", 262.
Yeah, Joe Tyron. But yeah, 6'4", 251 pounds. Shows a lot of speed and explosion off the ball, has a lot of upper body strength. I've seen him in a few mock drafts, and I've seen him at 29 to the Packers.
Wow.
But yeah, very surprised by that. But, after this was before they ended up restructuring Preston Smith's contract, which they did, I believe it was last week. Did Zadarius, I think today was Zadarius Smith. So, but yeah, I mean, I like Joe Tyron. I think he could also be a very serviceable guy. The Washington defense, the Washington front line has breeded talent, at least some sort of talent the past few years. So,
yeah, it's a very trustworthy program to go and bring, a guy in off of the defensive line. You can trust it. They'll be solid. His grades weren't all that great, at Washington. But if you go and watch his tape when he didn't play this past season, or he played a little bit, or no, excuse me. He opted out of this past season because it was a shortened season there in the Pac-12 to 6 games. And so the season before that, you go and watch his highlight tape against Penei Sewell, and you'll be impressed by the flashes that this guy is able to have on who we both agree on as our number one offensive tackle in this draft. So you look at what he's able to do there at high level competition. Like Sam, you already said, to your point, he's a very agile, quick, aware guy in the hole. And I guess the thing is here with him as well is like there's those flashes, but where's the consistency? That's why you see his grades kind of slip a little bit. But I think most projections I'm seeing him, it's probably around rounds 2 to 3, depending on who wants to take him there. But guy has a lot of potential. I will say that.
Yeah, and like you brought up the versatility in Joseph Ossai, and you also brought up where's the consistency, which is a great point. And I've seen some people say, like, could he be like a reliable edge rusher, or could he be a guy that's, a primarily off-ball linebacker? But yeah, I'm interested to see, what type of position he's put in, depending on where he's drafted. But yeah.
Yeah, he'll be good, and we'll move on to maybe a household name. I hope Amber's tuning in right now, and that's Ronnie Perkins, and right there out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I feel like I remember Ronnie Perkins playing on the inside a little bit, throughout his career, because I've seen him. A lot of people have him as a D line, a lot of people have him as a, an edge rusher, and this is another guy. Displays a lot of reliability. He started for the past 3 years at Oklahoma. He's a 6'3", 247 pounds. Depends what his primary position is. If he's a guy that's going to be on the, the inside, doesn't necessarily, might have to gain bulk a little bit. But I love this guy. He's very explosive off the ball, and I think he's got a bright future. I think he could be a very serviceable guy. If you're looking at a guy like him, could display a lot of versatility with the Green Bay Packers if you wanted to put him over on the inside, have him put on a few pounds, and put him next to Kenny Clark and be that rotational guy. Or even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you got Ndamukong Suh on. I don't think they've re-signed him, but there's plenty of teams that I think Ronnie Perkins could do very well with Ronnie Perkins on their team.
I think Ronnie Perkins is kind of the forgotten edge of this class. If you remember correctly, he was suspended the first, I don't remember. I think he only played 6 games this past season. He didn't opt out or anything. He was suspended for the beginning part of the season. So I think a lot of people forgot about him. And, to end the season and in his final 5 games, he racked up 31 pressures in those 5 games. You talked about his size. He's not the biggest guy. He's kind of one of those leaner types of edge rushers there. But if you watch the way that this guy plays, you will see the aggressiveness, the energy, the edge that he just puts into himself on every single play to just get to the backfield. And he does a great job at it. He knows how to do everything extremely well. He's fast. He's physical. He's dominant. Like, that's just know how to put it. He just comes with a lot of anger and attitude when he comes off that ball. And that's going to be very, welcomed into an NFL team and NFL defensive line, because that's what NFL coaches, NFL GMs, defensive coordinator, the attitude when they come off the edge, back to the quarterback who want to put him in the dirt and everything of that nature. So I really like Ronnie Perkins, and like I said before, I think he's kind of the forgotten edge defender here that could go early in these rounds that a lot of people have forgotten about.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy from St. Louis, it says. And, he was D tackle, recruited as a D tackle. But this is another guy that, not only displays his versatility on defense, played a little bit of tight end in high school. So, we did see him, bulk up a bit for that defensive tackle, for his time at defensive tackle. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing this. Minnesota Vikings have signed Patrick Peterson to a 1-year, $10 million deal. That's breaking news here. Per Saturday Standouts.
per Saturday Standouts.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think Ronnie Perkins very well could turn into be a sleeper pick and even a steal in a draft. And I think if he's coached the right way, I think he could have a very, very productive NFL career.
Absolutely. I like him a lot. Maybe those questions come into context when he goes through his process of interviews with the NFL teams about his suspension, why he was suspended, what led to those events or activities that happened. And maybe, he can kind of shed some light on that to them. And, NFL teams won't necessarily take too much of that into account. So we'll see what happens there. I don't necessarily know where I would see him going. Probably I would take him second round personally. That's where I like him to fit out, excuse me. But I wouldn't, be surprised watching him slip into the third round, maybe even late third round.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say he's definitely, I think, late second at the very late or very earliest, excuse me. But I would definitely say he'll fluctuate somewhere in the third round. Certainly a debut pick or first.
Yeah. It just makes a whole lot of sense for him, and it's unfortunate for him, but somebody's going to get a nice piece right there in that middle round and 3 or later. That'll be a good pickup for any team, I feel like, in the NFL if they can snag him. Keep it going here in another name, Carlos Basham Jr., defensive end out of Wake Forest, who I think, earlier in the season, a lot of people, including ourselves, had Carlos a little bit higher, especially at the start of this year. But where do we see him now necessarily fitting?
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, this guy was probably a solidified first-round pick. And I think out of all of these positions that we're seeing opt-outs, I think the edge rusher is probably one of those that hurt the most. Because Gregory Rousseau opted out, Joe Tyron opted out during the season. I think Osai did as well, but I guess we'll just say Carlos Basham Jr. and Gregory Rousseau. We're seeing multiple of these guys. Like Gregory Rousseau, Carlos Basham Jr. he's huge. He's huge, and I think he would benefit very well, playing next to a veteran. If you're looking at a team, the Cardinals only have 5 picks. The Cardinals have the first, the second, and the third. If Basham falls to the third round, Basham could be a guy that, people might be surprised if he falls as far as he does. And he's one of those guys. We'll get to another guy in Peyton Turner from Houston. Wake Forest isn't this jaw-dropping school. Yes, it's a Power 5 conference. It's in the ACC. But, Sam Hartman wasn't terrible. They don't have Jamie Newman. They didn't have Sage Surratt. Wake Forest wasn't this jaw-dropping team. And, and Carlos Basham Jr. was the leader of that defense.
Yeah, I think he's probably the most hyped edge rusher coming into the 2020 season just based off the production that he had in 2019. He had a 90.6, pass rushing grade in 2019, and then that fell to 77.2. This past season, he still showed production in terms of pressure to the quarterback and, showed some consistency with what he was able to do in 2019. But it was really at the Senior Bowl when people started to pay attention to him again. He showed his skill set and be able to rush from the tackle inside sub package, which helps in being that versatile defensive end that teams are looking for now. The one thing I do have to say about Basham this past year, it looks like he let his weight kind of dictate the plays that he would play hardest on. And, you get tired he's a big guy. I think he's like one of the bigger edge rushers we have in this draft in terms of weight and size. But he kind of showed a different skill set and maybe was putting forth a little bit more effort when it came to the Senior Bowl and showed out a little bit more. But he'll be a solid guy. You can see him probably anywhere from the end of round 1 to round 3 as well. Like a lot of these guys are right now. They're pretty solid guys overall. But yeah, he, like you were mentioning, played for Wake Forest. The offensive lines that they face in the ACC are okay. Maybe slightly above average. They're not great offensive lines by any means, but it's still solid competition that you're going up against in the ACC. He did play extremely well in 2019, so you can't, take that off of him. But one thing that you notice from watching his film is his inside swim move is absolutely beautiful. It just works almost every single time, no matter who he's going up against. And, that's on the film for the team leading up to it. Watch his swim move. He loves the swim move and he's very good at it. So watch that. So he's good at that. I guess that takes a little bit of less effort at the size that he is, and that makes him effective in that way, but he's going to have to learn a little bit more. And that's why I said that at the Senior Bowl, seeing him use a little bit more of his, versatility and the things he's been learning probably helped him in terms of, getting drafted higher in this draft.
Yeah, and actually that's exactly what I was going to say is, yes, he's very, very elite with the swim move. And, if it works, why not use it more? But I mean, like you just said, like he needs to be more creative. He's not very polished with his technique, and that comes with coaching. And I don't see him as a guy that can be this day one starter. And that's why I put him in the Senior Bowl. You know, guys to watch for the Cardinals, because you got Chandler Jones on the other side, who is, you know, arguably one of the most consistent, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL today. And what better guy to learn off of than JJ Watt now and Chandler Jones, excuse me. But
Yeah, there you go.
just blanking here. But yeah. I mean, that's definitely the one knock that I would give him, is he's not very polished in his technique. Yes, he does have that elite swim move, and you see a lot of that. You saw a lot of production. You saw a lot of positives from him in the Senior Bowl, but I think that's one area that he does need to polish up on. We need to see more from him than just the swim move.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's what he needs to expand on when it comes to the next level. Which you can learn those things. You know, you can use different portions of your body, different levels at which your shoulder pad is, where you're dipping, where you're not dipping, and things of that nature. And he'll learn those things over time. It's just about, is he going to be able to retain them and use them when it comes to game time and time to put them to use. So that's a question mark there. But our next guy is going to be Jayson Oweh. Did I say it right?
Yep, Jayson Oweh.
Jayson Oweh, edge out of Penn State, perhaps probably the next freakiest guy, if not the freakiest edge defender next to Rousseau in this draft. Just very ridiculous freaks of nature. You look at him and his body is exactly what you want out of an edge rusher, as a guy who does what he does, takes a lot of hits, has a lot of contact. Things of that nature. He's just like you could just imagine him just being in the gym like all day, every day. Like leave class, go to the gym, go to class again, come back to the gym. Like that's all this guy does and looks like. But I'll let you expand a little bit more on Jayson Oweh.
Yeah, and I feel like I've seen a lot of different opinions on Jayson Oweh. I know Mel Kiper Jr. was one to say that he would have benefited if he would have stayed back at least one more year, because maybe he doesn't have that, limited amount of elite tape to show. But I mean, like you just said, I mean, he's certainly made. Do I think he's going to be in the first round? I don't necessarily think he's going to be. I think he's going to be. I don't remember who I just mentioned earlier as being, one of those early Jalen Phillips. Actually, I think it was Joseph Osai. As being one of those, list of early edge rushers that we'll see taken, in the second round. And I think Jayson Oweh has the chance to develop into a very, very productive edge rusher if he's on the right team. I think if he goes to a team that just really doesn't have a solidified number one, he might have a little bit tougher time, in my opinion. But I think if he goes to a team, I don't know off the top of my head, but I guess like a team that just already has that solidified guy. Or even if he drops to the third round, you have JJ Watt for 2 years. You have Chandler Jones already on that contract, and Marcus Golden will be gone probably after a year unless he just blows up. But why not the Arizona Cardinals in the third round? There's multiple teams that I think could very, very well use him. But I think with the right coaching, I think this is another sleeper. There's another Penn State guy that I'm anxious to get to, because I think he's another sleeper in this draft.
Yeah, definitely. Jayson Oweh, you just, like I said before, he's a freak of nature. Reportedly runs a sub 4.40 for an edge, and a guy at 250 pounds is pretty scary if you think about it. But the thing that I have a problem with here, and I think a lot of other people do, is you don't see it translate to the field. It hasn't been effective for him. He did post 5 sacks in 2019, but in this past season he recorded 0. No sacks at all in this past season. So that's worrisome. But I think a lot of that might have had to do with him improving his pass rushing. His pass rushing went a lot better this past year. I think he rose his pass rushing grade by like 15 points or so when it came from 2019 to 2020. So he's definitely growing in some areas and probably still trying to keep, what he knows and understands about rushing the quarterback. So a very good developmental prospect for whoever can nab him in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yes, sir. And then we'll go to another guy at Penn State. We'll stay here with the Penn State guys, and that's going to be Shaka Toney.
Yeah, and this is a guy that I've had a lot of high praise on. And, like Gregory Rousseau, with the output of Micah Parsons, we saw the emergence of Shaka Toney. and Jason Owe. Shaka Tony, to me, he's 6'3", 253 pounds, tremendous burst of speed, an ample amount of athleticism. If I had to give one knock, you don't see a lot of consistency with his technique. And I think that is one area he'll definitely have to polish up. But I think this guy's screen consistency, you could argue his stats were better than Jason Owe's. You just mentioned that Jason Owe didn't have a single sack. And, talent-wise, Jason Owe very well could be that guy that's more talented than Shaka Tony, but Shaka Tony has showed it on the field more this season at least than Jason Owe. But I have a lot of high praise for Shaka Tony if he's in the right situation. And this is a guy that, to me, I think is a very easy guy to root for. I think he'll go – I think he'll be a very, very – I would say very, very early day 3 pick. I would be a little bit surprised if he goes in the 3rd. But I think he's got the talent to do very well in the NFL.
He does. He's another one of those small guys that we're sitting here talking about. Not very big at all, 6'3", 252. When you're talking about an edge position, you want to move it taller, a little bit, more meat on their bones. But he had you said consistency. That word stuck out to me. Very consistent over his time at Penn State. And I think a lot of teams are seeing him more as an outside linebacker fit. So maybe not necessarily right there on the edge. Probably fits best in a 3-4. Maybe even since he does possess that speed off the edge and, can also do all the technical things that you need to happen at the outside linebacker position. He did a great job last year after getting to the quarterback and then, had improvement there, stopping the run as well, which I guess both the guys from Penn State made it, a thing this past season that they needed to improve their run defense off of the edge. But yeah, I probably see him somewhere in that 4 to 5 round, area. That's kind of where we'll see Shaka Tony. It's probably a lot to do with not a whole lot of production, but enough on top of size question marks as well, and teams not necessarily needing outside linebackers, and they need more of a straight edge. So that's kind of where you're looking at Shaka Tony. His numbers are better than Owe, but Owe has the potential to be a different impact player when it comes to the edge position in the NFL. So I guess that's kind of where you see Shaka Tony.
Yeah, I guess in other words, the higher upside. Right. Shaka Tony may have been the guy that has proved it, not necessarily proved it, but has shown it more than Jason Owe at the college level. But Jason Owe, like you had just basically alluded to, he has. I would agree with you as well, Caleb, that he does definitely have the higher upside than Shaka Tony. And another guy, like we have gone through this list now, a little bit undersized. And that might cause teams to veer away. That might cause teams to draft him earlier if they see his athleticism. And by consistency in his technique, you see a lot of times he'll use his rip move, and then he'll play too high, and he'll let his athletic. You see a lot of defensive edge rushers, especially, who will let their athleticism get in the way of their technique. And I think Shaka Tony tends to be one of those guys that does tend to play too high at times. But he is very powerful with his rip move. You see a lot of creativity, but I just think he needs to polish that up. And I think the biggest thing for him is his consistency with his technique.
Yeah, if he becomes a fundamental guy, you can see him in the NFL on the field, consistently. And you're not going to hear his name, but he's going to be able to do his job the proper way. And that's all you can ask for out of a guy like Shaka Tony. So with that being said, let's go over to another ACC team who has a couple guys in here, and that's going to be the Pitt Panthers. They have obviously Rashad Weaver, and they also have Patrick Jones, who is in his own right just as good as Rashad Weaver. But go ahead and start with either one of them. I'm not going to, be picky here.
Yeah, I remember doing, I think it was our first mock draft. I don't remember where we had him, but, I convinced you to put Patrick Jones in the first round, and we did. I love this guy. I think he's got the elite body frame that could do very, very well in the NFL. And, he's very lengthy. He's very, very active with his hands. There's another guy that screamed consistency last season. He had, 43 tackles, total tackles, 12 for loss, and 8 sacks, which was second team all ACC. In his draft stock, I think he's going to continue to rise. I think we could see him as early, as the second round. And Who else opted out? Jalen Twyman opted out. Paris Ford opted out. And, I'm going to continue to say this too. They might have gotten crushed against Clemson, and Patrick Jones might not have had this elite talent, but he displayed his high motor and his explosiveness and his speed off the ball in that Clemson game. And that is one area, even the commentators as well were showing high praise for that. Clemson might have destroyed them, but if you look at specific players from that Pitt defense, I think Patrick Jones was the guy that stood out.
Yeah, Patrick Jones, him and Rashad Weaver next to each other, that is a scary sight, and or on each opposite edge of the defensive line. But he consistently went up in sacks each and every year at his time in Pitt. Also went up in tackles for losses and tackles as a total. Put on great film, and it's really telling about a player when he puts up his best film up against the best offensive line in your conference. So he's going to be a big guy. He's 264, 6'4". He can be one of those steals, but there's a lot of talk amongst people that either love him or hate him. I feel like there's a lot of people who really don't like what he can do. They say he doesn't have the bend or the footwork to get around the edge like they would like. Just that's not an issue. He's figured that out, and he's going to be able to utilize it in a better mode than he does currently, and he'll be able to grow into that. And they see him as like a round 2 guy. So there's a wide variety of spots that a lot of people see Patrick Jones taking. We were high on him, to start this year because of the ending that he had to his 2019 season. A shortened season, put up just a little bit higher numbers, so that was good. You see the improvement over that time. I would still probably stick him right between 2 and 4. See him as a round 3 guy. So we'll see what happens. And do you want to talk? We'll talk about his teammate, Rashad Weaver. I'll let you take it from there. Trying to find him.
And this is another guy. This is a guy I believe you were high on. I think you gave a lot of high praise on him during the season. And he is coming off. I want to say from the season prior. He's coming off an ACL tear. So I think that, his early injuries may stand out a little bit, but he certainly has the talent to go in the first 3 rounds. But I think the one thing that does stand out is certainly his not really lengthy injury history, but the fact that he has injuries early in his college career. That to me sticks out. Not as much as other players, just because it's not as much of a lengthy injury history, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's something to worry about. He showed when he did come back that he was okay, but he didn't really necessarily. You could tell he didn't look necessarily comfortable doing it, even though he said he was at 100%. Still takes some time for you to fully trust that. And that's kind of what it looked like at times. When he went to the Senior Bowl, he didn't look all that impressive. He looked impressive in one-on-ones, but when it came to the game time, he didn't look or show a whole lot to NFL scouts that were there. He's another one of those guys here with Pitt that it's a love-hate thing. They love some things about him. They hate some things about him. And, it's the speed off the edge. What are you going to be? How are you going to improve your footwork? How are you going to improve your foot speed on the edge there and be able to bend around, in an offensive tackle and get to the quarterback, get low, as they say on the defensive line. And that was kind of worrisome for him, but he is a strong dude. A big guy, and he'll be able to frame out and learn a lot. I think both of these Pitt guys are developmental. I think they have the pure talent and athleticism to be able to do it. It's getting the fundamentals down for both of these guys, being able to be the disruptive forces they are without having to overuse their talent and athleticism during a game, and instead relying on their fundamentals and techniques. Perry hopping in here and saying, hey, at the end of the show, what's up, Perry?
How's it going, Perry?
What is going on, buddy? But yeah, I'll let you take it from here, Sam, because I know there's a few people that you wanted to, go off of and maybe mention real quick. And I'll let you run off those real quick because I don't have them on my list anymore.
Yeah. And, there's one guy that stood out to me, with the Pac-12 shortened season. I remember talking to you about the Pac-12 too. And this is a conference that I think everyone should be very excited about for, the future of this team, because there's a lot of young talent that, I think people should know about more. And, there were two of my favorite guys, if you remember, Talanoa Hufanga, who I think is a draft riser. I think he deserves to go in the first 3 rounds, at least the third round. And if he falls, he falls, but I think he's going to turn into a steal. And I think he was the leading tackler for the Trojans, the past, I think either this season or the last or both. I think he's got the talent to be a hybrid guy. You look at Hamso Nasruddin as a hybrid guy. I think Hufanga's got the size and the talent to be that hybrid guy for an NFL team. And I think he's going to be a very exciting player to watch. Another Pac-12 guy I looked at a lot, which, we'll be diving into after the draft, hopefully, is Kayvon Thibodeaux, top recruit, played in Oregon. He'll be draft eligible for 2022. I think he's the most talented guy in the draft. As of right now, we could see guys come out of nowhere, as we did with Joe Burrow in 2020. But, Hamilcar Rashed Jr., the big thing that definitely does stand out to people is his size. And that's another guy that, we might not see him go in the first 3 rounds, as he might be a very early day 3 pick. And because of his size, you might see teams trying to veer away from him. And, he also played at Oregon State. And, Oregon State, if he would have played at a team like maybe Washington or Oregon, he maybe would have gotten a little bit more attention. But, he lit up the Pac-12. I think he was one of the most underrated edge rushers, draft-eligible edge rushers in the Pac-12.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a name that a lot of people should have, in their memories based off of what he was able to do in college. So, just keep an eye out for him. I'm not seeing him on a lot of things. And just something I quickly want to point out, since I'll give my 2 edge rushers from Florida State a little bit of love here too. Joshua Kaindoh and Janoris Robinson. Didn't put up the stats. Obviously, Kaindoh had his injury issues, but they're both freaks. When it comes down to it, they also went through a lot while they were in college, changing different coaches, changing defensive coordinators mid-season, changing schemes on a constant basis. One going down with an injury, the other one becoming number 1 overall guy and being the most productive at that time. And each of them are most likely to get drafted. I'm seeing Janoris Robinson anywhere projected from about like 3 to 6 in those rounds, and then Joshua Kaindoh from like 5 to 7, and maybe even free agency. So a little shout out to those guys. If you get them healthy and you put them in the right positions, they will be productive for you. So I think they'll be solid pickups no matter where they go.
Yeah, I remember texting you about Joshua Kaindoh. This dude's a mountain of a man. He's 6'7", 265 pounds. But then again, I think if he gets drafted, it's going to be 6th or 7th round pick. And if he goes undrafted, I wouldn't be too surprised. I think his injury history is definitely going to stand out. But he's a 6'7", 265-pound guy that has shown his capability of being not necessarily hasn't shown his eliteness, but he's shown his productivity. He's going to be hard for a guy for an NFL team to pass up on with that size.
Yeah, I completely agree. With that being said, is there anybody else you want to highlight before we go ahead and hop off here and say goodbye to the people?
No, I think we got. I mean, there's multiple. We probably missed a lot. Chris Rump, Peyton Turner, but Austin Watkins out of UAB. But that's more research for us than everyone else. So.
Yeah. You guys, if we had an hour and a half show, we would do it. We would break it down for you guys as much as we could. But we try and hit the quick thing. Especially sports people out there that were paying attention to drafts, fantasy people as well. Not necessarily on the defense side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball. But some people play with defenses, so they pay attention to this. But this is also interesting to see where your team might lie. Who do we like that you might start liking a little bit more because you start doing research on them. So it's fun to bring you guys this week in, week out. I think we'll probably just move on to the next level of the defense next week, and that'll be linebackers. I don't know if we're going to do inside and then outside separately yet. Sam and I will discuss that after the show and figure out what's going on with that. But we thank you guys again. Head over to our shop at teespring.com/stores/unwrap. Head over to patreon.com and search Unwrap Sports Network. You'll find us there. Join one of our tiers, guys. Come join us. Have fun with us. There's a lot of exclusive content, especially when it comes to the gambling side of things. There's always conversation going on in that Discord group chat. You get awesome perks, like in that $10 level, you get the signed jersey or signed memorabilia. You get entered into that giveaway, so that's awesome as well. Use code RXHemp-USN at rxhemp.com for 10% off every single one of your purchases on all natural CBD pain relief cream, guys. Great hot and cold remedy for the sore joints and muscles. And then, of course, back to that gambling stuff. Like I was just talking about the exclusive gambling content in the Discord. If you are a gambler, head over to mybookie.ag and use code USN100 for double your first deposit. It's a minimum deposit of $45. So you deposit $50, you get $50 in free play. Again, guys, that code is USN100. And specifically for this month in that David Montgomery signed jersey giveaway that the $10 Patreon level members get as well. If you enter this and you screenshot it and send it to us at the Unwrapped Sports Network, whether that's Perry, our founder, whether that's the main page, whether that's our show's page, whatever it is, send it to us, and you'll also be entered into that giveaway for the signed David Montgomery jersey there, the running back for the Chicago Bears. So it's been an awesome time, Sam, and we'll be talking soon.